the sort of the constant chop and changing you see even from Rishi Sunak's policy, like, oh, I'm going to sort of row back on some of the net zero stuff. Oh, great, brilliant. Oh no, I'm not so sure that's been so popular, so I'm gonna row back on that again. It just, he's kind of, I like the guy. I think he's competent. I think he's a good manager. I just, he doesn't. I don't know what he believes in. That's the thing. I don't know what he believes in, but I feel the same way about Keir Starmer. I don't know what these people believe in. I have no idea what they're going to do.
Well, I think, if anything, you've got a good contrast there between Starmer and Sunak. You don't often get a good contrast between them. The reason there are all these factions rising up under Sunak is because they know he's going to lose, or they think very strongly, they suspect very strongly that he's going to lose. There is as much kind of division, arguably, under the service in the Labour Party. The difference is they're riding high in the polls. They know they have to fall into line. So
they just have to not say the wrong thing.
Exactly.
In fact, don't tell people what you're going to do.
Don't tell
people too much what you're going to do.
Try not to say anything. Try not to go anywhere, talk to anyone.
I'm wondering how long that survives an election campaign, though, because we've already seen the sort of falling away of this £28 billion green investment pledge. Again, this is going to create hundreds of thousands of green jobs, but it's £28 billion originally. It was supposed to be £28 billion a year. There isn't a spare 28 billion quid a year in the Treasury coffers. Never going to happen. Now they sort of watered it down to it being sort of 28 billion, sort of by the end of the first term of a Labour government, and now it's been sort of watered down even more. And you just think, like, what have you even got left of this pledge? I mean, I want them to water it down. But in an interview with Kate McCann on Times Radio, Keir Starmer, after it had been watered down by Rachel Reeves, his Shadow Chancellor, because it's all subject to our fiscal rules, he's now basically said he hasn't scaled back the pledge and that the sum of money was desperately needed for green investment. But if you're going to spend £28 billion on green, and again, investment is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that. It's spending, not investment. Very different. It's not going to create jobs and economic growth. Where are you getting that money from? I mean, taxes have to go up, or you're going to have to cut spending on something else. Where's the wiggle room?
I can't understand why they're why they're clinging onto this position, which is will they, won't they, will they, won't they. You've got one minister suggesting that it's definitely going to happen. You've got one saying, well, we might have to look at it again. There's been this watering down, but then you'll be able to find a Labour frontbencher who say, of course, we haven't abandoned this policy. And on I guess the generous interpretation is that this is an attempt at kind of constructive ambiguity. We want to seem like we're still really into the green stuff because that pleases a section of the electorate, whilst we also want to indicate that we're not completely crazy, which obviously will please another section of the electorate.
Hopefully most people, yes.
But I think at this point, it's that if that was the plan, it's backfired, because now it just looks like indecision and confusion. And
that's very unlike Keir Starmer.
Exactly. I mean, he's such a man of conviction, never known to sit on a fence. This is very unusual, but it does burnish, doesn't it, that reputation for constant U-turns.
And I know you lot did about this plan, this £28 billion plan. I mean, this is all about getting us to the absurdity of basically being at carbon-free electricity production by 2030. So it gets into parity in 6 years' time. He reckons that they're going to be able to produce 20% of our energy, which is what electricity, is required for in our energy, through non-fossil fuels. So it's going to be wind and solar. I mean, let's just have a national laugh day. And nuclear, even though, of course, you can't build nuclear. We're actually closing down more nuclear power stations by 2030 than we are opening, and it would involve a massive scaling up of our nuclear energy production anyway. I mean, this is a laughable, insane, unachievable, ridiculous policy, and they're sticking to it.
No one believes it's achievable either.
Do you think they do?
I do wonder, because of the fact that you were talking there about nuclear, right, which should be the part of the energy mix regardless of whether you're green or not, because it's such fantastic technology. You know, Hinkley Point has been pushed back beyond 2030. What's it going to do? Suddenly, out of nowhere, just magic up all of these nuclear power plants? So I do wonder whether, again, this is just a case of signalling. He knows that he can't look so unambitious that he abandons every pledge he's ever made.
Yeah.
So he's clinging on to this one for dear life. But even people within the trade union movement made abundantly clear that this is unworkable, it's not going to happen. And if it did happen, it would be a disaster for industry. Yeah. So I don't see how it would survive contact with reality.
But like a lot of things that Labour announce. I mean, you know, again, my worry is always, do you believe it or not? Like, do you genuinely believe that a man who puts on a wig and a dress and calls himself Sheila is a woman? I mean, do you actually believe that he is actually a woman? Because that terrifies me if you actually believe that. It's worse than you lying to me, pretending you believe it. Do you actually believe that we are going to have, you know, electricity produced entirely from non-fossil fuels in 2030? Because, again, What else do you believe that's completely insane and unachievable?
I mean, that's what worries me the most, is that the things that they're most willing to stick with, the things that they really don't want to U-turn on, tend to be the things that are most damaging. So all the green policies, Labour, yes, there's been some flip-flopping on 28 billion, but that's still something when push comes to shove, they really don't want to abandon. If you think about all the identity politics stuff, the amount of time it took for Keir Starmer to even whittle down the number of women he thought had penises to, 1 in 1,000 or whatever it was.
Still quite a lot of women when there's 35 million of us.
Still quite a lot. And then also at the same time, some of the race equality stuff which has come out this week, which is just basically BLM ideology being turned into law. So I find it fascinating. The stuff that he might have previously held to, which are actually quite popular, things like nationalisation, things of that nature, he can ditch. But stuff that's really unpopular, unworkable, and going to be a disaster.
It's stuff that a tiny number of people in the sort of Labour Party movement feel strongly about. I know this is a scary thing.